No,
Saying it was quick.
nobody else
It's saying
agrees
it was
that
quick.
it went quickly.
Yes.
Okay, okay, good, good. Okay, so as we know, this is our last and final class, and our final exam is next week at the same time on May the 6th. We should have contacted Mrs. Dean by now to set our appointments. We should have arranged with our officers if they give us time off or take a vacation day or family responsibility day, what have you. But by now, each of us, we got a review sheet. We should have gone through the review sheet. We know what the mandatory question is going to be. We know that it's going to be 20 points. We know that you have to select 4 other essays along with the mandatory question. So you should be coming into this class fully prepared, knowing that I'm going to answer the mandatory question, and these are my 4 essays from a topic of 10. And of course, we would have made a decision if we completed one topic for homework. Even if we didn't get full points, we would have gotten some feedback. And from that feedback, we should be able to successfully complete that topic in the final exam. So you don't even need to, like I said, you would have 1 essay down already. And so you should not have to um, be worried or concerned. And the key is to be organized. Turn that off. Yeah. Yeah, I press record. Yeah. So the key is to be organized. And once you're organized and you go in there prepared, you should be successful. You can organize 20 minutes per question. There are 15 multiple choice questions. And then, of course, 4 essays you choose and 1 mandatory question. And so fully prepared, 20 minutes per question, and we should all be successful. Correct? Donna,
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes.
you fully prepared, and you have your review sheet now to the 2 persons were tasked with each of the review questions. So they're going to give us some good points. And we're going to say, is this meat or is this fluff? And so once you wear this is meat, and this is what will help you get points on if you so choose that question, then of course you document what they say and ensure you have good notes to study from. Don't just select 4 questions, select 5 or 6, because sometimes there's a twist in the question, and it throws you a bit off, and you say, oh, I was going to answer the question on SDRs, but it asks some specifics. I don't have that information, so I want to choose something else. So I would pick up at least, practice at least 5 essays, just in case, you get thrown, by what the question asks. That's the next important thing. Please read the question in its entirety. I have a lot of persons who would have, of course, selected their homework question, came into the exam, did not read that. It's not going to be the exact question that you had for homework or for classwork. It's going to be a combination of, or parts of it. And then they just, would have remembered this is what I did for homework. And so they copy, they don't even bother to read the question. This is a question on SDR. I can remember my homework with my eyes closed. And then they just paste it onto the paper, and then they don't get full points because they did not answer the question. So please ensure that you read the questions at least twice. Each question has about 2 or 3 parts. Ensure that, the first part you read it. Sanctions. What is a sanction? I answered that. Um, what are they used for? I answered that. And the sanctions framework, okay, this is what the sanction framework does. So don't just go on about the sanctions and Cuba is a sanctioned country or Venezuela is a sanctioned country and miss out the framework, okay? Again, real life examples is how you get more points. So please ensure that you have a real life example in our sanctions class. I went over, I gave you a few of them with the numbers and everything. And so by now you should have already researched them. And if you're going to answer the sanctions question, you should have an example. Same thing with the SDRs. Same thing with the Egmont group. By now, of course, most of the questions are going to be geared towards Bahamas. So please ensure that you have those Bahamian examples, and that's how you get full points. Because again, we're testing not memory, but understanding. And like I said, the only way at this point for you not to be successful is if the same person who did your homework does not show up to the exam, and then you may have some problems. But if the same person who did your homework shows up to the exam, then you should be okay. Okay, any questions so far?
Miss Bullet,
Yes?
Yeah.
is the exam, is it 3 hours? I think you said?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I had sent you the last essay question to review. I don't recall seeing any feedback or response email, but I think I got an email saying that you got it, but I don't think I got.
Got a response? Okay, yeah, because I wanted to make sure, because I think Jason too, did I give you a grade? I know we've been corresponding, but did you get a grade for your homework? Because I saw a lot of emails, but I didn't see your grade. Did you get a grade for your homework? Okay, he is not there. Okay, Donna, so anybody else did not have a grade or did not get some feedback? No? Okay, great. So I'll look that up for you, Donna, and make sure you get that feedback. I want to thank Nikisha. She has sent us loads of information concerning the sand dollar. And of course, we know it was the sand dollar is one of the initiatives that the central bank and the governor is working on. They're implementing to ensure that we're not cash intensive when we are risk rated. And because Nikisha was so gracious and she invited us to a seminar, she sent us at least 3 or 4 pieces of correspondence. There are going to be some questions, perhaps 1 or 2 geared towards the sand dollar. And so because you have all that good information that Nikisha shared with us in your emails already, please look it up, and you never know which question it's going to be a part of. So ensure that you can speak to it knowledgeably. Okay,
Are you
so
referring to multiple choice questions or the essay question?
both.
Oh, gee.
But you think, Nikisha, no, Nikisha, you are not sorry. We are thanking you. No, again, we work in this, we work in this industry, and one of the key questions, where's Symphony? Is Symphony here? No? Okay. One of the key questions we asked, and this is a question that came up in the ICA book, are compliance professionals prepared for the new technology? Are you familiar with FinTech and RegTech? Did you sign up for the Securities Commission Technology Hub? Did we do any of that? No? Okay. Hopefully that part will be on the exam. Hopefully.
Miss Bullet.
Yes.
A lot of this.
Not Donna who worked there. No, Donna, not you.
No, I may, okay.
You is
No,
the sauce, Donna. You is the sauce.
Miss Bullet, no, my thing is, listen to me. Hear me out. A lot of this information we had for 10 weeks, it's already a lot of information. Honestly, I can't take no more new information. I have information overload. I mean, yeah, the FinTech thing, I'm familiar with, but anything else harder on this, I feel like my plate can tip over, man.
Donna,
I
I
just
give you
feel
no,
like
I gave you nothing new. Nikisha sent these correspondence periodically throughout the course, correct?
Yeah, but I was busy
Yeah,
working on the homework.
preparing for other things.
But didn't I ask you all about the 3rd week to sign up for the FinTech and the RegTech and make sure y'all understand it? Just for understanding's sake, not that you could relay it and to make sure that you understand and you know, apply it in your companies.
I read through it, but I didn't know that this was going to be a part of the thing. I wish I knew that 2 days, rather than being 2 days
10
before my
weeks
exam.
ago. I wish I knew it 10 weeks ago.
Yeah, this like 2 days before the exam, and I don't know that.
Every single thing that we discuss can be on the exam, every single thing. So this is not a surprise. And we talked about this 4 weeks ago. Why are you saying you wish you knew this before 2 days before the exam, when we did FinTech and RegTech week 3 or 4?
So we can talk about it some more tonight.
I hope so.
No, that's my talk right there. That's my talk right there. Okay, so
Would you say FinTech and redneck? What?
go listen to the The recording. You got a recording.
Oh, Lord.
Okay,
But I feel
so
like I can step
any
over.
any questions or concerns? And again, when we share information, we're not just sharing this information for, talking sake. We sit down and we talk a lot, but we don't materialize anything and we don't put any action behind all this talk. So ensure that you understand the purpose, what the initiatives are about, and why it's important. Okay, I'm not saying to understand it 100%, but like I said, it's coming. Are you going to be prepared when you are the compliance officer in your institution? Or you can read up on it the night before and speak knowledgeably to it. Hello? Hello? Anybody? No
Be
response?
prepared.
Okay, good. Good.
I have a question. The format of the exam is written, right? Am I correct?
Yeah, so there's 15 multiple choice and
No,
then,
no, no. I mean, we only have pen and paper. No
yes.
computer
Yeah, no,
system.
it's not
Okay,
online. Yeah, just pen and
okay.
paper. Yeah, so again, please only come with your mask and your keys. Please do not bring your cell phones. I said all of this last week, right? Do not bring your cell phones. Do not bring any bags, any books, anything. Just come with your car key and your mask, and that's it. Okay, and a pen and paper will be provided. Okay, all the notes and everything that you take has to be left with the question paper with the institute. So don't expect this might scrap paper or what have you, and I want to take it. No, everything has to be left. And remember that it will be recorded. So please, no thinking that nobody's in the room and you could just pull out this piece of paper or, you know, what have you. Because we want to avoid that 150 charge for a retake and avoid counseling if because that will fall under cheating. So you'd have to go to counseling and pay 150 if you want to attend the institute or UB in the future. Okay. All right. Okay. So anybody had the opportunity to read chapter 10? This is our last and final chapter. Y'all should be telling me what it says and just asking me questions at this point. This will end the intermediate section. Of course, we know the next section is ICA. It's 9 months of anti-money laundering and 9 months of governance, risk, and compliance. And so just a little bit of history. It used to be 9 months of AML and 9 months of compliance alone. But in 2019, they changed the program, and that's because you used to have an exam as well as 3 essays. They removed the exam and just left the 3 essays, and they um, changed it to include governance, risk, and then compliance. Okay, and so chapter 10 talks a little bit about governance and talks a bit about leadership. Okay, so anybody had the opportunity to read? The last
Yes,
class,
I
nobody,
did.
okay, go
I
ahead,
did.
Cassandra. Tell us
Basically,
what you read, what you got from what you read over the chapter.
so it basically did the same thing as we did in intro in that last chapter where it talked about the framework and who is responsible for what part of the compliance framework. For example, we need to know what the board does. We need to know what the compliance department does. We need to know what senior management is responsible for. Talked about the role of the MLRO. It gave the 8 main responsibilities and some additional, I believe it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 additional roles of the MLRO, as well as how policies should be followed and how they should be implemented.
Okay, so give us some of those tasks that um, the MLRO should carry out.
So they talked about the MLRO receiving the STR, evaluating the available information, determining whether it has merit, making the reports to the FIU if required, filing internal disclosure or unusual transaction reports, acting as the conduct person for law enforcement, acting without influence from the senior management, cultivating an awareness of developing ML typologies, being aware of the contact list and sanctions, contributing to AML, CFT, and PF training, preparing and dealing with regulatory visits, being aware of the countries and inadequate AML, CFT, and PF frameworks, and remaining fully up to date with all of those legislations and guidelines.
Okay, thank you, Cassandra. So we are in the AML class. Are we prepared? Of course, a hefty hat that you wear. Are we all prepared to, train the entire staff on AML and CFT and PS? Are we prepared to keep abreast of the laws? Again, RegTech is the laws that are applicable to this new fintech. Are we prepared to attend these seminars, um, go out to industry briefings and updates, and then come back and disseminate this information throughout the organization? Are we going to subscribe to the regulators and the Attorney General's office and the Bahamas Financial Services Board and receive those updates and share them with the institution? Are we going to read the newspaper every day? And when the CEO comes down at 7 a.m. in the morning, will we be there to speak knowledgeably to the current events? And most recently, our news came to my institution to interview the CEO. And of course, he said he was, after speaking with our news, he was going to do a documentary for CNN. And he basically said, can you write down what I should say? So are we prepared for that, Cassandra? Is Cassandra there?
Yes,
Yes, you are?
yes.
You are? Okay. Okay, good.
I
Good.
studied.
Okay, good. Okay, so just so you again have the awareness of what is required. Um, and then again, on top of governance and leadership, and I'm sure you've heard me say this before, at one point I worked in auditing, and when we went into institutions, there's an audit opening meeting, and we had an opening questions list, and the first question on that list was tone at the top. Okay, and we would interview the CEO and whoever the directors were or the executives were, and from we'd have a question and answer period, and from their responses we would make a determination whether or not what the tone was coming out of the executive committee. Were they in touch with anti-money laundering? Did they support it? um, were they aware of laws changing and updates? When there are updates, what seems to be their attitude towards it? Are they always overworked and too busy to send somebody to a seminar? Are they just paying for the tickets and nobody's showing up? Or are they engaged? Are they participating? Are they going out and networking? Are they staying current? Okay, and so that tone from the top in audit and in compliance is very, very important, because you do have all of that ties into the culture of the organization. And of course, they say the fish is brought from the top. So if at the top, the executives are not concerned about policy and procedure, and they're not concerned about risk, and they go outside the risk appetite, and they don't document proper procedure, and they don't care, then of course the mid level staff and the entry level staff, of course they will have like an I don't care attitude. If controls are not in place, if there's not proper segregation of duty, and it can basically cause the downfall of an institution. Some of you may be familiar with the Enron case with Martha Stewart, and most institutions, in the first days when you go to work, they would share with you their vision and their mission statement and their values and their goals. And from the Enron case, um, after interviewing the staff and finding out that the majority of the staff did not know the goals or the mission statement or the values, the majority of the staff, whilst there was a handbook that was some 60 pages, nobody ever read it. Nobody followed the rules. The laws in that handbook had been outdated for more than 10 years, and nobody updated it. So in terms of if your handbook, employee handbook, was prior to 218, does it cover tipping off? Does it cover failing to disclose? Do you know the updated fines? And so in that Enron case, they found that whilst Enron had all this nice policy and procedure and everything in place, they never had trainings. They didn't disseminate it to the staff. And so they got a further charge of just writing baseless statements that nobody knew and nobody followed. Okay. And a lot of companies do that, just write baseless statements because this is what's required for us to get licensing or to pass, inspection. And we don't ever bother to train the staff, and the staff don't know. Then you have some companies that actually do print out their values and their goals and their mission statements, and they stick it throughout the organization. So in the break room, in the lobby, or wherever the staff congregates the most, they normally have signs up. But do we ever take the time to read it? Do we know if our organization says to support what bin Laden 100% is one of our goals? And a lot of us work for foreign entities. Do we know? Hello, anybody? Symphony, do we know?
Well, Miss Bullard, I really don't know. So that's something I'm gonna have to educate myself on. But I have a question. I know that one would say maybe the answer to this question is time management, right? But when you go on a job and use time to train, majority of times they want to train you to learn what you have to learn and get to step in with the workload that's already there. Along with the fact that once you finish training, you need to be doing what you're supposed to be doing every day. So where is one supposed to find the time to and I'm not trying to be disrespectful, to continue to read a manual at 60 pages when if you don't do your work, it's going to be an issue. This is a catch-22 situation.
Yeah, but again, if we're not showing up to our organizations and we don't know what their vision and mission and goals are, then are we truly carrying out what they want us to do? Or are we showing up to work with our own agenda?
I mean, I agree with you saying. I'm just saying that majority of times what they want you to do is what they put in front of you at that particular given time.
But do we give feedback, and do we say, and guess what? That happened. Royal Bank, when I was there, they had signed us all up, the entire staff up for this Harvard mentor program, where we would go and do continuous CPD hours, continuous development hours. And the staff said, how am I supposed to do CPD hours? And this affects my performance appraisal at the end of the year. And after a few staff members complained, and then Royal Bank assigned 2 hours per week. And those 2 hours per week were scheduled, and persons would go and do their continuous development.
I like that. I think that's a good
but again,
idea.
that was something that we had to advocate for. We couldn't just say, I'm overworked and I'm underpaid. I don't have time to do your work. I definitely don't have time to continue, do the professional development. So it had to be done. So we found a way, and then they just scheduled the hours, just like AML training. And before 2018, I used to have to run, especially the executives, I used to have to run them down and say, hey, you have to do your AML training. And in 2019, when Central Bank sent out those surveys and they said, send us a copy of your training logs, I sent a copy of the logs, and they said, we have 35 staff. I only see 32 signatures. Can you please confirm who the 3 persons are that's missing? And I only had to say that once. And those persons were, Miss Bullock, can you hold the AML training tomorrow? Can you do that? Okay. And then the FIU came behind the central bank, and they put an ad in the paper, and they say, any subject or subsection ABC, training is annual and statutory, and any firm that has not fully trained their staff can be fined up to $10,000 per person. And then people started to take it seriously. And it was just like a 180 in my company, where I didn't have to run anybody down for training anymore. Okay, so all of this is a part of governance and leadership. Okay, if your firm is hands-on with the goals and the values, and they are offering trainings, and then the regulator even came back and they asked, did you carry out a test? on what you taught your staff. And I said, no, I didn't. They said, but we require a test. So I had to go back to the staff and say, okay, we had that nice training last week, Friday. The test is going to be in 1 week and everybody has to have a grade. And, the passing grade was high, 70%. So if you didn't get 70%, you had to do a retake. Okay. And like I said, all of this is a part of enforcement. So a lot of us, because the law has changed in 2018, we are still on a learning curve. And I always use CUBA, and it's you get the knowledge, you get the understanding, then you believe you have to do it, and then you act. Okay, and like I say, I could use the credit unions. They've been operating for the last 30 years. They didn't have a compliance officer. They were not regulated by the central bank. Now they fall under the central bank, and I've liaised with some of the executives there, and they really do not believe that they have to do all this work. Okay, we operate all these years and we were profitable, and we didn't have to have an Mlro in place, file an SDR, offer training, and what have you. Even with the risk assessment that came out in 2019, and the regulators have enforced it. Okay, and like I said, somebody was in the class just in intro, and they had made her the compliance officer, and they didn't take it seriously. She said, I'm overworked, there's no way I could get the risk assessment done. She was let go. The institution was fine, and so that's where we're at. So we are in an era now of enforcement. It's gone are the days when we had to slap on the wrist, and we could get away with the regulators calling us and saying, Ms. Bullitt, I need you to fill out this survey. No, they want proof. They want source document. And so, Ms. Bullitt, remember I tell you, I filled out the survey, I just checked all the boxes, yes, 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 because I figure I couldn't tell the regulator no. They asking if we have an enterprise-wide training on sanctions. I said, yes, of course we do. And then they said, send us a copy of it. And then I fell off my chair because then I had to write a whole entire policy on sanctions. Okay, and so that's where we are. Okay, not only on sanctions, when you're talking about corporate governance, you want to ensure that there is a whistleblowing procedure in place. Okay, so first of all, you must know that mission statement and those vision and those goals to show up and not carry out your agenda, but carry out the vision of the company. And then once you have established policy and procedure and you disseminate that through the staff and through the company and everybody is on board, then you make them sign and acknowledge that they understand. Okay, and the book talks about assessing governance and leadership. You must consider outsourcing in terms of service level agreements. And so our IT was stationed in the Channel Islands. So we had a service level agreement with the Channel Islands. Then we were Royal Bank Trust, and of course there was Royal Bank Retail, and they handle our HR and our wires for us. So again, then we had a service level agreement with Royal Bank Retail. And all of this falls under outsourcing. And so central bank has a guideline that tells you there are minimum standards required for outsourcing, because one of the standards is confidentiality. While Royal Bank could send our wires, they were not privy to our client information. So it wasn't like we could send, Erica Ferguson wants a wire. No, we had to send a unique identifier number, or we had to put some agreements in place for confidentiality in order for Royal Bank Retail to carry out that service on our behalf. Okay, and so that's how the outsourcing works. And then of course we all know about Eric Snowden, right? He was the whistleblower for the United States. He is in exile in, I think, in Russia. Okay, and that policy is very important, and that sits with normally with, if you're going to blow the whistle in a company, that normally would sit with the compliance department. Okay, and so you should be a very confidential person. Not only confidential, you should be approachable. Okay, you should be diplomatic in all your responses. This ain't about like, and I don't like this person, so I don't want them telling me nothing. No, everybody within that organization is to feel that you are approachable. You have an open door policy. A lot of people will say, Miss Bullet, I don't necessarily like you, but I think that you're fair. So I'm coming to share this with you. Okay, so persons don't have to like you, but they at least should think that you are fair, and that you would handle them fairly, and that you are confidential. Okay, so as a compliance professional, we need to ensure that we develop like our soft skills. And so people see us as, a confident, and sometimes through this whistleblowing, people go to jail. Okay, and companies shut down. So you have to take it seriously. So what if it's the compliance professional that you have to report? Okay, or somebody in compliance? Of course, well, the central bank is now establishing the office of the ombudsman. But even whilst that's not established, they do take those types of complaints. And I'm sure the regulator will step in and assist you, or you file an STR. Okay, but you cannot be afraid to blow the whistle. If you are afraid, sometimes when an investigation happens, you may be, caught up in the middle of it, and you may go to jail. Okay,
Miss
so
Bullet, I have a question.
go ahead.
Is it too late to change the date for the exam if we offer to take it earlier?
So you could speak to Miss Dean.
Okay.
You would have to arrange all of that with Miss Dean, yeah, because like I said, the whole point of making you were taking it earlier, so we had to do like 3 versions of the exam. So
Yeah,
she'd have to
that's what I was
decide.
worried about, because now looking at these things, I may need to take it on Thursday instead of day after tomorrow.
Cassandra, look at it. Why are we feeling like something changed?
Because a lot of things I read, like the sand dollar thing, I was not prepared for, and the tech stuff.
What
So I
what
think
would
I
it,
need to go
like
look
what
into
would
that.
you have to prepare for the sand dollar thing? You do you know
I
why?
haven't read. I haven't read through it, so I don't know what questions are
Okay,
coming.
but what was the purpose?
What do you mean?
What was the purpose of this digital currency? Is it cryptocurrency?
Oh, eliminate to us using so much cash,
Okay. And why did we not want to use so much cash?
because we were blacklisted at one point for being cash intensive.
We were? You sure?
Not blacklisted. It was recommended that we not be so cash intensive.
By who? Who made that recommendation?
Was that the FATF?
No, we are concerned. See, you just have to word it properly. We are concerned. We know that being cash intensive could cause us to have a high risk rating. And so the whole purpose is so we're not risk rated high, right? So in that category, we want to ensure that we are not cash intensive. And we know that the Canadian banks, they don't they don't open accounts for businesses that are cash intensive, like the money services business, Western Union, Cash and Go, and then the gaming houses, right? So the whole purpose was, so if you want to get 10 points, then you just like would have read over what Nikisha would have sent to add some more meat to it. But I can imagine a question would be like, because in the opening it says this is not cryptocurrency, so I can imagine that one of those multiple choice questions would be, is it cryptocurrency?
Oh, I see what
You
you're
see what I mean? So it isn't nothing that we
saying.
wouldn't have covered. So don't overwhelm yourself.
All right.
Okay. Okay, so where was I? Talking about awareness training. I'd ask you all from intro to go and watch Dirty Money. Did we watch it? The HSBC case.
Yes,
No?
I-
Yes, yes.
Okay. And so we saw from that, we got some awareness. We saw that people perceive, you know, a lot of people, I attended a seminar, an industry briefing, where the first thing they said was, do you want to be like HSBC and charge $1.9 million? And everybody went, oh, because we all broken it. We don't even have a million, much less a billion, right? But then if we watched that, we would have found out that that was a slap on the wrist for HSBC, right? And then let's think about what question would that be involved in. Of course, transaction monitoring, because they hyphenated the names. And so therefore they had a very savvy transaction monitoring system. However, they hyphenated the names until the system wouldn't pick up a Donna / Hedburn. It would pick up Donna Hedburn. So when they did the screenings at night, Donna Hedburn, who would have been charged with money laundering and drug dealing, the name doesn't show up on the report. And so we don't get a hit. Correct?
Very true.
Okay. So this is why I say to go and do these things. So you would have that awareness. Because a lot of people feel that, oh, the 1.9 billion, they must have closed down. No, they still going strong. Okay, all over the world. And then that should prove to you that, you know, some of us are even, oh, what it is, what was the animal farm? All of us are equal, but some of us are more equal than others, right? If it was one of us, of course we would go to jail. But depending on who you know, and if you can offer the attorney general a position after he retires, then you may get a slap on the wrist. Okay, so like I said, ensure that you understand what is required. Ensure that you have the awareness. Know that, like I said, the tone comes from the top. In terms of training, you know, I attended a training where I said, you know, you are required to know your customer. And I had account managers who said, how are we supposed to know these customers? And they were account managers for more than 10 years, you know? And so you are required, and if your company does not have the proper metrics in place, meaning that you have 1,000 customers and nobody is assigned, it's not categorized high, medium, or low. The high don't go to the seniors. Everybody just whomever is available, you know, picks up the next customer. Then there's no accountability. Okay, and so ensuring that your job description tells you exactly how many accounts you should deal with. And where if you're junior, you should be saying, well, if we have 800 accounts, yeah, I can have a portfolio of 100 accounts, but they should primarily be medium and low. I'm junior, I should not have a portfolio of 100 high-risk accounts. And we have had some institutions that closed down and were fined. And again, even in Dirty Money, they hired somebody who was not trained, put him in an off-site location and did not give him the proper systems to function properly. Okay. And I know of a case locally where it was a junior compliance officer. They gave her an office, the company car, and a very large pay. And then I had my own experience where I was offered $100,000, but told I'm not going to make any of the decisions. I'm just going to sign off on them. Okay. So you want to ensure that you're not, you know, getting involved and taking on, knowing that I'm just out of intermediate. I don't have a first degree. I didn't do ICA, but I'm offered this position. And because it looks good and I want, you know, a card to say I'm the executive, I go in and take on, you know, and end up doing some unscrupulous things.
How, Miss Bullard, how far after leaving the post could you be called into question?
The statutory limit is 7 years, eh?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Right,
Okay.
and banks are required by the central bank to retain records for 5 years, and then, you know, the Securities Commission 7 years, so. Yeah. Okay, so the important thing is ensuring that you establish a compliance culture, one where we support training, where we support policy and procedure, that we support them being updated and current. You know, I did this class at a particular institution, and for the entire 10 weeks, I said, has anybody seen their AML directive as yet? And everybody said no. Okay, are you familiar with your regulator? Have you ever visited their website? Would you know if there are any gaps between your AML directive and what the law states? They said no. They'd never seen it. Okay, and so that's a red flag. Do you understand how transaction monitoring works? Do you understand that as an account officer or a verifier, when you receive these transactions, do you know that it's outside of the profile, or does the compliance person have to tell you? And again, another situation where there's a red flag is when compliance knows the customers better than the account managers. Okay, and so we are the second line of defense, you know, entry level management, entry level, they are the first line of defense, account officers. And so you can't have the second line of defense having more information on the client than the first line of defense. Okay, and in your organization should have rolled that out from 218 different levels of defense. Are we familiar in our organization? Have they rolled it out in terms of mitigating risks and being gatekeepers? Are we familiar with that? The 3 lines of defense? Anybody? Anybody work in a financial institution?
Can you repeat that
Yes.
question again, please, Miss Bullard? Or maybe someone's gonna answer. Sorry.
Yes,
Sorry,
yes,
Miss
ma'am.
Willard, I
Yes, we
missed.
are. Yes, we are, Miss Bullard.
Okay, so you that's Yvonne. Okay, so we explain, and is it the way I'm saying, the front line and the managers are the first line of defense, compliance is the second line of defense, and then audit is the third line of defense?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and everybody understands their roles.
I would like to think that they do.
Okay, because compliance again is everybody's business in the organization, and you know, the compliance department or professional cannot be, you know, run the entire organization. So everybody is like a hands-on approach from everybody within the organization. And so if there is a new system, you know, being implemented, you know, and I had somebody in my other class said, well, we have a new system and we are supposed to be monitoring the triggers, but nobody knows how the system works. So if nobody knows how the system works and you monitoring the triggers, people that go outside of their profile, or if Ms. Bullitt goes to jail tonight, her name shows up on a report in 2 days or 3 days once it's out on court news, and you're getting this report and you see Ms. Bullitt's name, but you just don't know that that's a hit because you don't understand how the system works. And if again, we watch Dirty Money and we watch the season on Volkswagen, we would see that Volkswagen put in a new system and defrauded the world with their admissions test. Okay, and so that's why Volkswagens are dirt cheap right now. Okay, and so what is very important, and I think on this exam, the question is going to be based on culture. Where does the tone come? The culture of the organization. Are persons aware? Are they trained? Are they educated? And again, like I said, when we come into audit, that's what we look for. And we have been in organizations where, the finance department, because they thought they were financing, they were not aware of AML risks at all. And they felt that it was just compliance job. And so, of course, we had to ask for everybody's resume. And we said, somebody in this department has to go to AML training. Okay, so make sure that within your department, and I mean, if you're not the manager, it'll be difficult, but you should be able to look around and ensure that you have sufficient education and you have sufficient experience. Okay, either or. Can somebody mute their mic, please? Galaxy 6 or Symphony? Yeah, so ensure that you are protected and ensure that persons in your department, y'all know who y'all can identify as the gatekeeper or the knowledge source or the person who should, you go to a historian, to get sufficient information. And if you're in a department where none of you AML savvy and none of you understand risk appetite and none of you understand risk and how to ensure that controls are in place to protect yourself against risk, then that department needs some training or somebody has to speak up. Okay, and again, if we just give you a bunch of paper, a big thick book, on the first day you start work, we let you sit down in an office and read, and we ask you 1 or 2 questions, and then we say, that's it, and there's no more time, then you have to suggest that training should be ongoing, and at least once a month, 2 hours can be dedicated to, taking the time to train, keep abreast, and be up to date. Okay, or to, one class that I'm teaching now, I go there at 2 o'clock because the institution said that they shouldn't have to give up their Saturdays to get training. And so I go there in the middle of the day at 2 o'clock on a work day and give them the training. Okay, so it, like I said, it just depends on your organization and how serious they are. Okay, and so there are I guess opportunities out there available to you. And so the topic of training, it's ongoing. It's a statutory requirement. And the risk is greater now. And of course, that we see many persons going to jail or being brought before the courts, or we see lots of stealing by reason of employment. And sometimes it affects us. Was there something we should have done differently? Was there a control that we overlooked? Is there a training need to ensure that, even if it's a staff member that's doing something unscrupulous, we could point it out. Okay, those are the questions that you need to ask. And so we know what the task of the Mlro is. We know it's a regulated function. The AML policy is normally like reviewed and updated by the compliance department. But again, you want to ensure that everybody is accountable, everybody knows their responsibilities, and you go a step further. And we have gone through the central bank guidelines, so you are familiar with it. Of course, you should know your regulator by now: the Securities Commission, the Gaming Board, the Insurance Commission, the Compliance Commission. and you should look at their guidelines and then compare your guidelines to theirs and ensure that there are no gaps. Okay, because essentially you are carrying out the function every day, not the compliance department. And so you are the gatekeeper, and you should be able to say, hey, I, carry out this function each day. However, I don't see the proper controls in place. We offer trust services, but there's nobody with step qualification on staff. Okay, or we only ask for one signatory when the risk of a mistake or verification is very high. So perhaps we need to ask for two. Or I have certain persons that are the verifiers, they are the A signatories, and they be asking me how my day is rather than actually looking at the transaction to make sure that nothing fraudulent has happened. You all have those persons. I think I talked about it before in that class. There's one particular person, she just is want to know how your day is and when last you been out and when last you had conch salad. And she just signed in 5 million, $10 million transactions. Right? We have those persons that are the gatekeepers, but don't keep the gate.
No, I'm not familiar.
Yeah, also everybody, Danielle, check say and make sure that all the transactions are legit.
Yes, ma'am. I actually just heard one of the tellers say to their client that they're unable to do the transaction because they're out of their limit or something they were saying in that order. But I feel like they do their jobs often.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, our gatekeeper, she's very strict, like to the point where she's such a stickler. You know, me and hers have some, well, I use RAW more than she does, but she's quite a stickler. And she's very into compliance. She's the compliance officer. So even though she's annoying sometimes, I understand, you know,
why she goes that route.
Why she does what she does. Yeah.
Okay, good. And so try to support her a little bit more because again, it's very difficult not to overdo it because there's so much risk involved. Okay. And again, with your AML policy, we audited a company that said we don't have a risk appetite for PEPs. And then they had 4 PEPs on their books. Okay. So you want to ensure that you understand who is a PEP. Okay. Or you understand the products and the services that your institution offers, because a lot of times we don't understand, and especially if it's a new product. You know, they have one meeting and it's mostly sales based, but it does not, they don't explain the risk to you and they don't put controls in place to protect the institution. Okay, so that's why I said it's best to be familiar with what the regulator requires because, this particular institution, they accepted accounts with bearer shares. And there were 3 requirements if you were going to accept bearer shares. And in their aim, they did not have a bearer share policy, which was fine because whatever you don't have to have a policy for everything, but there should be some mention of it in your AML guideline because it's high risk. And they only had 2 of the conditions rather than the 3. But the person who, was responsible for those bearer share accounts was able to pull out at least 5 emails where they had sent to, the person responsible for that policy to update that. And they said, it's difficult on the account opening form. We have one of the criteria is missing. And so when you go back and ask for this, they say it's not in the policy, but the regulators, require it. Okay, so particularly if you deal with high-risk products and services, you want to ensure that you understand them. And they're high risk because there's been a lot of fraud. There's been a lot of money laundering in those areas. Okay, so don't think it's okay and we don't have to pay attention to it and it's no big deal. No, it's a red flag if your policies have gaps. It's a red flag if your policies are outdated. It's a red flag if your account opening forms are outdated. And in 2018, some institutions had a version date of 2003 on their account opening forms. And like I said, we used to do all these things back in the day, but no longer can we do these things. Okay, so ensure that you protect yourself. And you may say, Ms. Bullitt, it's not up to me. But you must cover yourself and say, you write a very nice diplomatic email. I noticed that our account opening form says 2003, which means that all of the laws are not covered, and they most recently were updated in 2018. Could the responsible person, look into it or what have you? And then the Bankers and Trust Act just updated to 2020, and there were some changes in there. And so we couldn't say, well, no, we do not accept the changes, or it's going to take a while to implement it. No, it should be discussed. Persons should be aware that there was a change and there needs to be an update. And then, our forms say section 19 of the Bankers and Trust Act. So it's good not to put the particular section on it, because section 19 has now changed to section 77.
So,
Right?
Question. How often do you think the account opening onboarding forms should be vetted, revamped?
Well, I think they should expire at 10 years, but they need to be verified every 5 years. Just to make sure, like after 2018, a lot of changes had to be made. It's not that you go and change everything, it's just that you review it. And it's a what should I say? If we're sending out a form that persons are signing that they abide by section 19 of the Bankers and Trust Act, section 19 is no longer applicable. It's now section 77. If you have to go and take this form and show up in court, when you reach the court, they're not going to read the act, the previous act.
Okay, so a trigger should be when there is a change in the act or change in the law.
Yes, you should at least be aware, and it may be difficult to change the forms immediately, but there should be a workaround or an additional form or something to that effect. Or just put that you're governed by the Bankers and Trust Act, and then you don't have to worry about the section 19 or 77. Because like I say, I work in wealth management, and these persons have their own accountant, their own lawyer, and what have you. And so they question these things. Okay, our forms say you have right of offset, but we offer SAC accounts, and SAC accounts, there's no liability between the accounts. They are segregated accounts. And so, the lawyer called me and said, how can you ask me to sign a form that says you have right of offset when these are SAC accounts? That means Daniel has an account, Symphony has an account, Erica has an account. And if Erica goes bankrupt, they don't have the right to debit Symphony's account. Okay, so they said you need to send us a revised form, or we can't complete the account opening package, and we need this account open right away. And then the next thing is express consent. Your correspondent bank will say, send us some information about this wire. What is the purpose? Who is the sender? What have you? And that's not the time to be asking the customer, can I share your information with Deutsche Bank? Can I, because you would essentially be tipping off the customer saying, compliance, stop your transaction. Okay, and you have to think of a savvy way or something to tell your customer, because you should never ever, compliance never speaks to clients. And you should never ever say that compliance or suggested compliance stopped it or needs additional information or the correspondent bank. No. So you have to think of a savvy correspondence that you tell, your clients, but you should never say compliance stop it. And we have a lot of people, people are even copying me outside of the institution saying, speak to our compliance officer. And I have to always say, no, I don't speak to clients.
So, Ms. Bullard, you're saying, just to understand what you're saying, so if the client raises a complaint with the company and so they can carry them to the commission or whatever, you don't never see at that, when do you ever step in, or you always have someone message the client?
Yeah, I'm the account officer or the CEO. Now, compliance must get all complaints because central bank or whoever the regulator is, there's a report that you send the amount of complaints and the resolve to the regulator. That's a compliance function, but compliance never speaks to that client. We will advise the CEO, like they have 5 days to respond, or within 24 hours, they should acknowledge receipt. They have 5 days to respond, and we would give them guidance. We would never speak to the client.
Also, so basically, if a client emails you, you never answer them back.
Never. And the client should not even have my email.
So what is that, like a organizational policy, or is that like written?
No, compliance is independent of the business. And if I email them back, then you have the instance of the checker checking the checker. We are the gatekeepers. And so therefore you have to carry out the work and we make sure that you are compliant. So there has to be a proper segregation of duties. So you can't be like account officer and compliance or something like that. No, there has to be a line. We are independent. We should never be operational. And when we call that client, we become operational.
I'd like to get some more insight into that.
Yeah,
at another time.
Yeah. So independence is key. And this is why we report directly to the board. So we are not influenced. I don't have to worry about my bonus. I don't have to worry about the CEO say, Ms. Bullet don't approve, no account to open. She hampered sales the whole year. We report directly to the board. So there's less intimidation and complete independence. Yeah. And so in my last position, they asked for an organizational chart before they approve you as the Mlro. And for some reason, they had me directly to the board, but they put a dotted line to the CEO. And I told them they had to remove it. And they say, oh, they approved it like this before. I said, okay. And they sent it, and Central Bank and the Securities Commission came back and said, please update your organizational chart and remove that dotted line from the CEO. And they said, oh, it's just for administrative, for like HR matters. And they said, no, remove it. Should she have an HR matter, she goes directly to HR or to the board.
Okay, I guess we could talk about that more extensively, I guess, as time goes on.
Yeah, but all of it falls under leadership and governance. So you want to ensure that under governance, that's the only way you can get approved. In fact, the Securities Commission went further to even state that the Mlro can only have a position as a compliance officer and no other position. So you can't be Mlro compliance and operations or in CEO or what have you. Yeah, because some companies like to say, well, we only have 50 clients, so we could use this one-man band. No, they want to ensure that the checker never checks the checker.
So then the question is then basically it also affects your social life as well then.
Why would it affect your social life?
Okay. I guess we could talk about that later.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, so any concerns or questions? I mean, the only thing that I saw is that, Central Bank and the Securities Commission said we need a private email address, we need directions to your house, and we need a private cell phone number, not the bank cell phone. And I had to submit that.
So when you change address, you have to submit that to it.
Well, I don't remember having there's an annual update form that you fill out. And on that annual update form, you would say any changes, but I submitted the bank's cell phone number, the phone that the bank gave me, and they said we'd like your personal phone number should there be an event. And the FIU also asked for my personal phone number and directions to my house. Yeah. So I mean, that was the only thing socially, any effect that I felt was a little bit intrusive, but I understood. Yeah. Yeah.
I guess if you would put up resistance, then I guess that would be reason for suspicion as well.
Yeah, but I mean, why would you resist? Why that's for your own protection, you know, because like I said, they do, you know, there was a lot of intimidation from CEOs. There was a lot of compliance, you know, people stood over me and said, but you must, you don't want no bonus if you don't approve this account. You know what I mean? And so that's why they made the position completely independent. So there's less intimidation. I wouldn't say no intimidation, but less. And then when they established this analytics department, like I said, they are hands-on. You pick up the phone, you call them, they speak to you, they collaborate, they give you lots of information. And so they're very, like I say, diplomatic. There's an open door policy. Like back in the day, you know, we used to hide from the regulator. We was afraid every time they called, and we used to have a meeting on what we could say to the regulator. Now it's, like I say, it's a relationship, and they are very fair, and they are very helpful, and I've called them, I don't know what to do. And they've helped me, they've sent me examples. There was one incident where a CEO was reported, and you know, persons didn't feel that they had access back in the day. And so now they have, you know, you have an audience once a year where you go in and you speak to them, and you disclose anything, you know, that's bothering you, and they send inspectors to check it out. You know, because sometimes you say, well, I've spoken to the organization over and over, and they're not acting. And so they put it on their list of checks and balances. And like I said, they're very hands-on, and they're very confidential. And even when you cease to be the MLRO, they have an exit interview, and they ask you, how was your relationship? Do you want to make any reports? Would you like us to check? And even though you're no longer going to be with the company, you know, are there areas of concern? Yeah, so like I say, very hands-on and very supportive. And action right away.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's always a good thing, you know?
Yeah, like it's come a long way. Like I said, yeah, so I mean, you feel much more secure and much more protected. And not only this, now what they are doing is they're also generating a list, you know, of MLROs from companies that failed, that did not make the proper reports, or continuously being with companies that fail and not interjecting before they fail. You know, so they also have a list. And so they have a blacklist now. When you try and apply, you know, sometimes people just they do their dirt and jump from company to company, you know, because I was at a company where the MLRO who left took the entire office with her. She put everything in the shredder. When I got there, was not a document in sight. And she was the MLRO for at least 10 years. Okay, so.
Well, at the end of the day, that's the company's problems too, you know, Miss Bullet, because as the compliance officer, that don't mean that you don't report to nobody.
Okay, correct.
So obviously that's an institutional issue more than her personal gripe. Because my thing is, if that's what you did to my company, then for some reason, if you are negating evidence, if you are destroying evidence, you need to be brought before the courts.
Correct.
Because I have nothing to prove that I had a business.
Correct.
So that's deeper than what she doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So any questions or concerns? We have an overview of governance and culture and what should be done, and the task of the MLRO and formulating policy and procedure and what should be in there. Yeah, no, okay. Okay, so let's move on to anybody getting their 5% tonight? No, no 5%. Did y'all see in the news where Miss, what's her name? The lady who defrauded tourism with her son.
Elmo.
Elma
Tourism.
Campbell, yeah. Elma Campbell has asked for her BMW back, but she said the writ have expired and she'd like to have a BMW. You already read the newspaper.
But she just pulled up to my office the other day in one. So what she need the one they take them for?
You
know
must
what?
get it back
people
then.
business.
Let
me stay people business.
Everything good.
But this ain't this a new BM or this the one that they take? She might already gotten it back.
No, that was 2 months ago.
Oh, okay, yeah, but she was just in the news this week saying that her writ has expired and that seizure order on her car, and she'd like her car back.
Miss Bullard, you said, oh, what has expired?
Apparently, when they arrested her, they put out, a seizure order to take the BMW because she wasn't able to prove how she was able to afford it cash. So therefore, they give a seizure order, and again, you have to be brought before the courts by us for a certain time. And of course, we was in the pandemic and stuff like that. So of course, all the court dates are backed up. So the seizure order, let's say perhaps it was for 1 year. And it expired. So because it expired and her case has not been brought up as yet, she is asked for her car back. But she probably could get off anyway.
I was just gonna ask if she
So
could
why
get
one of us could go to jail before she go to jail? Give the woman back her Mercedes, a BM, and let her, live her life. Because I'd be very surprised.
Nothing gonna happen anyway.
So Miss Bullet, why was it even pointed towards an asset that could be seen? What about assets that can be seen, or what about her house?
Well, I guess they're working on all of that. Like I said, her son was already out on bail. And if you're already out on bail for defrauding BPL, how is it that you get a second bail for defrauding tourism? And now you want the assets that you bought with the money that you stole. I don't know how it works.
To be honest with you, Miss Bullet, to be honest with you, she is not the only one who needs to be brought to attention, because that's basically the culture of the Bahamas.
But I mean, isn't she within her right to ask if the writ has expired?
My thing is, someone had an attack on her personally, because she must be able to do what they asked him to do, because really and truly, that's like the nature of most people over here who have quote unquote plenty assets. That's what they've been doing from time. I'm not saying that some people didn't get their own legitimately, but majority of them didn't.
Real.
Miss Bullet, I can tell you that in the next year, you're going to see a lot of attorneys being brought before the courts for clients' money, a lot. So just keep an eye and an ear out. You will hear about it.
Yeah, they can be brought before the courts.
Yep. Okay, good. So most of you would have gotten a review sheet. Most of you, and I think some persons weren't here last week, so they don't have a question. And so the persons who were not here last week, please identify yourself so we can, I guess you can chime in and give some input on question 9 or 10, since you weren't here last week. Who was missing last week? Nobody? Everybody has a question? Okay, good. So we will start with Shandika. And Shandika, who is your partner?
Meryl.
Meryl. Okay, I can't even read my own writing. And Meryl even asked me questions about this. Meryl, I doing bad. Okay, Meryl, excuse me. So Meryl and Shandika will start off with the Egmont group. They'll tell us what are the meats, what are the fluff, and how to answer this 20-point question.
Okay, so basically
we said how we're gonna tackle this question is by explaining what is the admin group, what the admin group does, as well as the purpose of the group, and then go into discussing the admin training working group, along with the case studies, probably talk about one of the case studies in the book.
Okay, so tell me about one, and remember, it's gonna be Bahamas based. So tell me about one that's like prevalent in the Bahamas. So once you talk about the book, then you do like a comparison. Hello?
Hi.
You still there?
Yes, I didn't hear what you say. Sorry.
Oh, okay. No, I was saying, tell me about our topic for this year is what?
Drug trafficking.
Okay, and so of course we would have found many drug trafficking cases, right? Because
yeah,
even before it was placed under money laundering, we were pretty good. Carolina Bethel, she for sure made those drug traffickers go to jail. Okay, so tell us about in the book one case that is like prevalent in the Bahamas, so you can do a comparison.
Well, we can, one of the examples were the 90 Nose case.
Tell us what the book first, what the book, what
the book, with the book
what the book say, and then what Bahamas have. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the first case, oh geez, I lost that page. It's basically in Russia, where persons were, where they recruited persons to smuggle the drugs, as well as they were forcing persons to smuggle the drugs because they were giving them loans and they were behind on their loans. And they were using like cash couriers to transport their monies, as well as they were using their family members as well to put the funds into the financial system.
Okay, and so isn't that prevalent here where let's say we had the 90 Nose and the Sean Isaacs and their girlfriends and their mothers would have these mansions and all these very luxurious cars?
Right.
Right. And so now the law has been increased. Now they have updated the law to say we can lock up your mommy, your sister, your brother, and your girlfriend if they cannot prove how they got this unexplained wealth. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, good.
Okay, and then of course we were going to touch on defining drug trafficking, and then basically just discussing about 2 or 3 local examples.
Okay.
And then, sorry, go ahead.
Give us a local example.
Okay, so we were going to talk about the young lady that was pretending to be an attorney to smuggle the drugs into prison because she presented a fake Bahamas Bar Association ID, and that's how she was able to get inside the prison. Apparently, she had the drugs taped to her body, and she was actually doing this for about, say, 5 months before she was actually caught.
Okay, and so if you were going to talk about one of the prison cases, then what you should do is talk about the prison case from the book. Because remember, you said, I'm going to pick one. So if you're going to pick one, there's a prison case from the book. So pick the prison case from the book and then pick the prison case that you would have researched.
Okay.
The one in Indonesia?
I know the third one was.
The third one was from the prison.
Yeah, when he had the assistance from the prison officers.
Yes.
And the warden, I think it was the warden.
Yeah. And of course, we know many prison officers have been brought before the court most recently.
Yeah, there was another local prison officer in May 2020
along with 2 others who was caught with drug possession as well. Yeah. I mean, that's the one you were referring to.
Yeah.
So, Ms. Bullard, so basically, when we are talking about the examples, you want us to probably compare it to what's in the book?
Yeah, but what I can't give you the question, but I'm just going to
sorry.
tell you that it's going to be Bahamas based.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Mandatory or no?
yeah, this is a mandatory question.
Okay. Okay.
And it's worth 20 points.
Gotta get it together then.
Yeah.
Oh, we have mandatory, but how, tell me the format of the exam again. I didn't know. I thought you had like 5 questions and you had to answer 4 of them.
Hold on.
Okay, so it's 1 mandatory question and 4 essays, and then 15 multiple choice questions.
So 1 mandatory question plus 4 essays?
Yes.
Wow.
It's at the bottom of the instruction sheet that you would have gotten on the first day of class.
You say, whoa, I think intro was worse.
Yeah, intro was 7 essays.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, you're talking essays, like how many words you talking when you say an essay? Because I mean, we only have 3 hours. Some you could write in 3 hours.
A page.
Right? Oh.
Just 1 page, just make it, each of those essays are going to be worth 10 points. So ensure that you have 10 points. And the mandatory essay is going to be worth 20 points.
So that one is about a page and a half. Ish.
Yeah.
Ish. Oh. Okay, so are we on the right track?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any questions on question 1? And anybody need more help, or are we clear on what question 1 is going to ask? Are we clear that we have to do research? Are we clear that it's the mandatory question?
Yes.
Yes.
Clear as mud.
Clear as mud. Great, great, great. Okay, so we're gonna move on to question 2, sanctions. Nikisha and Yvonne.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Sorry. So we went into what a sanction is imposed for to encourage a particular type of behavior. Then we listed the 5 main categories of sanctions as shown in the book on page 28.
Give us one, please.
Counterterrorism, sorry, I gave you the wrong page, page 26 in my book. Counterterrorism, conflict resolution, protection of civilians, that's more than one. Non-proliferation and democratization.
Okay, and what is counterterrorism?
To prevent the financing of terrorist activities.
Okay.
And then the types of sanctions could be financial, economic, trade, or travel. Then we went into sanctioning bodies, OFAC, UN, the UN. And then we spoke about or listed where the Bahamas sanctions, this could be found on the website. Then we mentioned our rating with respect to sanctions. So recommendation 6 in the 2017 evaluations was non-compliant. Recommendation 7 was partially compliant. And then recommendation 6 was upgraded to partially compliant during the re-rating exercise in 2018. And then we referenced the Wolfberg Group, their guidance that they released in 2019 relating to sanction screening and their suggested elements of a sanctions framework.
Okay, and what did they suggest? Give us two things that they suggested.
The person responsible, well, they had a section on responsible person, making sure that person is knowledgeable and have a good understanding of the laws and regulations and what is entailed in running a sanctions framework. And then, like we always talk about, a risk assessment part of it, where we're making sure we understand the risk involved with doing business as a financial institution and how sanctions may relate to that risk.
Okay, any examples? Because if you talk about, let's say, there are 5 categories of sanctions, for example,
Right.
counterterrorism, and then you say what counterterrorism is, then you should use a, slot an example right in there.
Okay.
Do you have one?
I don't, but I'll listen.
Okay. No, I called
I have
out,
one.
who's that? Who has one?
Cassandra. I
Okay,
have
go
three
ahead,
that she said.
Cassandra.
Go ahead,
The first one
Cassandra.
in 2019, Venezuela was sanctioned to ensure that Maduro and his cronies did not profit from the gold mining, state-operated oil operations and other business transactions that would enable the regime of criminal activity and human rights abuses. The oil sanction cut off U.S. trade with Venezuela, but China lent a hand to Venezuela in 2019 by giving an emergency loan of $5 billion to combat the spread of the coronavirus.
Okay, excellent, very good.
The second one was Iran. In 2018 to 2019, the US put a sanction on Iran to again ban oil trading. And this was to foil the development of nuclear weapons. So you said I think that was the 4th class, that would fall under weapons non-proliferation
Proliferation,
sanctions.
yes.
Yeah, and the UK Parliament stepped in, taking advantage of low oil prices and gas reserves. They remain on the FATF list of blacklisted countries.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Very
Appreciate
good.
that.
China gave $5 million to who?
To Venezuela.
To Venezuela.
Yep. And Russia went to Cuba's aid when the US sanctioned Cuba back in 2019 after Obama lifted the embargo. Trump put it back.
Yeah, and the UK gave 500,000 euros to Iran during the pandemic for PPE.
Yep.
5 how much?
Google it.
1,000.
Euros.
I'll be right here. I just answered the question. I gotta go back.
Google it, because you have to do your research to be able to explain it properly. I don't want you just to write these points.
No, I'm not doing that.
Okay.
I have no intention of doing that.
Okay. Okay, good, very good. And any questions, concerns on sanctions?
Ms. Bullet,
Yes.
excuse me, for sanctions, where can we go to find out for the Bahamas? Which website again?
Nikisha, could you give it the website, please?
It's on bahamas.gov.bs under the FIU's page.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question for Nikisha.
Go ahead.
You said that somebody said that the person responsible must be knowledgeable of sanctions and a risk assessment is needed to undertake risks involved. Who say that?
No, there's a 2019 guidance, sanction screening guidance that was released by the Wolfbergs group.
Oh, Wolfbergs.
And yeah, and in that guidance, they have listed the suggested elements of a sanctions framework.
Ah, okay, thanks.
Right, and one of the questions is normally about a sound sanctions framework. So that would be good to know if you're going to answer the question on sanctions.
You said sound sanction?
A sound framework, a sound sanctions framework.
But that's
Look at the
also what's on
last
page
page.
28, right?
Yeah, look at this, page 28, yeah, that talks about the framework and what should be included.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, Cassie and Mia, IMF and CFATF.
You skipped number 3.
Oh, sorry, risk framework, sorry. Symphony and Nell.
Okay, so how we'll be approaching this together is I'll talk about the risk framework and Nell will talk about appetite and rating. So basically, I think that from my studies, and Ms. Bullitt, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that the risk framework is most pertinent for anybody who's a part of the organization to be aware of, which you mentioned earlier. Person should know what that is based on. It's almost like when you frame in a house. If the beams aren't solid, the house is going to come down if the foundation wasn't laid properly. So risk framework really refers to the process used to identify potential risks, eliminate or mitigate risks, as well as effectively monitor and evaluate risks. And because businesses are exposed to risk daily and not sure as to what angle it will come from, the risk framework must be effective. It should be able to identify risks, measure them, and along with monitoring and governance. And once this is in place, then the organization would then go into, that is more the grandiose scale, but they can scale it in a bit more and categorize the risks and the objectives, as well as assign persons to ensure that those risks are mitigated. In addition to that, that's when we would also go into, not so much speaking into risk appetite, but it does compose that as to whether the organization would rate itself as low to high, along with its clients based on its jurisdiction or who its shareholders are. Then once that risk has been evaluated, then it would look at the insufficiencies, as you mentioned, in terms of persons stealing by reason of employment. What in our business makes us susceptible to this? Sometimes it may be persons within the organization, as well as it can be done with outside auditors to look at what's involved and then to make the decision. And to assist with this review, I always like the way that accounting firms handle the risk appetite, the risk framework. And so I turned to KPMG and Deloitte, and I looked at their approach to how they deal with it. And the way they have separated the risk framework is that they look at third parties, first of all, and then they look at anti-bribery, corruption, and fraud. And then they also look at the risk framework within the organization. And using that as a metric system for how best. So they call it a 3-pillar system: architecture, implementation, and effectiveness. That's what I gathered from my research.
Okay, and what would be, you said organizations determine whether they are risk high, medium, or low. What would determine if they're high, medium, or low? What would be like a high risk product that would cause them to be high?
Well, from what I researched, you mean the organization itself, or you mean what they offer?
Yeah, what they're offering would potentially cause them to be high.
I guess I could do some more research into that. I didn't go that far, but what I remembered from what I did study and what you told us is that what could cause it to be high risk is just the jurisdiction in which it operates in, who its shareholders are. But when it comes to the products, I would need to go and do some more research about that. Maybe Nell could assist me with that if she's more.
No, you see, that's you just in understanding the question. Do you do business with PEPs?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you were saying when you say products, I thought you was meaning like if you selling like bearer shares.
No. Okay, so
like
bearer shares, if you allow that. Products or services, you offer a service to a PEP then.
Okay.
Yeah.
So whether, let's just say, even if you hold in mail for a PEP, that could be risky.
But I mean, you wouldn't hold mail unless you have an account.
True.
You would not just hold their mail.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's
they would
true.
have to have an account for you to hold the mail. Yeah.
That's true. That's true. I guess you could look at it like that. So is there anything that when it comes to risk framework that we would need to know additionally, or we should try to keep in mind?
Again, would jurisdictions would be considered high risk, and if they have a jurisdiction, they'll use like Afghanistan, so you would automatically know that's high. Our product and service, of course, trust services are high risk, correspondent banking, PEPs, bearer shares, all of that is high risk.
Okay.
Then it's going to, I know there's a question on the risk rating is similar to what's on the exam. I mean, on your classwork, what are the categories on your risk rating?
Okay, no problem.
Stuff like that. Yeah.
So I guess now shouldn't say I guess now we'll continue with the appetite and more information on the rating.
Okay, go ahead now.
Well, the risk appetite is seen to be one of the first things a company should determine based on the amount of risk it is willing to take and manage. This is the level a company approaches risk based on its objectives for operations. All risks should be assessed. and controls should be applied to the degree of risk, which is measured by the likelihood of the risk occurring. So my understanding is pretty much reviewing everything that comes in, especially as far as clients are concerned, making sure you've gathered all of the information and how it can affect the company itself, whether short-term, long-term, and ensure that whatever the threat is, that you're able to take it on and manage it or eliminate it so that a company doesn't shut down or lose clients, lose business, or lose money. For the risk rating, the assessment of risk should occur daily and be categorized either low, medium, or high based on its impact on the business. So low risk are little to no impact on the business, meaning they don't give any effect and they can easily be eliminated. However, still monitored like every 3 years. Medium risk give some impact, but doesn't cause any serious consequences. So those should be monitored every 2 years. And high risk are more severe or cause major impacts such as reputational or economic damage, and they should be monitored yearly.
Okay, so you said the institution should determine its risk appetite, and they should make a decision based on what products and services or risk they're going to take on. What are the
Right.
4 steps in assessing this risk? Give me one.
Identifying the risk.
Right. Okay, very good. And then, of course, it's in analysis, evaluation, and then risk treatment. Okay, and then you said, let's put some controls in place. So if you were going to offer services to a PEP, give me one control you would put in place.
For PEP, as far as PEPs,
Symphony could help, or Symphony help Nell with control.
If I had a PEP,
Mm-hmm.
I have to move from the TV, excuse me.
well, I would monitor them. I guess I would give close monitor to them as far as persons who they are associated with also. And, how, I guess, connected they are.
Okay, but now you're trying to get a
What
point.
about-
So you're giving me fluff.
What about
You're giving me fluff
what about
now.
if you ask for additional account opening information?
Okay, so not that, of course, you ask them for source of wealth, but don't just put account opening information. You have to specifically say they would be asked, my control is, they are asked for source of wealth versus source of income that I would ask for medium or low person. I would label them as high risk. I would have the board approve them. They are your controls.
Okay.
So what is the difference between source of wealth and source of funds? Because there's something new to me.
Because source of funds can be your employment letter, a pay stub, your employment letter or a pay stub. Source of wealth, is like 3 years of financials.
Or
A
inheritance.
copy, inheritance. You
Okay.
sold a piece of property, stuff like that.
Okay, so basically, who has source of funds, their money isn't as long as persons who might have source of wealth. That's what you're saying.
Not that the money in long, it's just that they're not as risky. Because
Okay, then what about another? Sorry, go ahead.
No, everybody who opened an account with us had to open it with $250,000. Right?
Okay.
And so only if you were high risk, then you would have to bring in financials. So your company should make a list of what they consider source of wealth versus source of income. If you were low or medium, you could bring in a pay stub or a job letter.
Okay. So because y'all cater to ultra high net worth individuals in any event,
Correct.
The documentation would then be different.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
This isn't just like you walking into RBC, how much you open up your account with it, $100. That ain't nothing.
No. You could open with $100 and still be high risk.
Okay.
Because your
So then what
shares,
if
your shares, you are bearer shares.
no?
Sorry?
True.
What was you asked
No,
a
I was
question?
gonna
I couldn't
say
hear
that
you.
what about if you put on two? No, sorry. Was it me or someone else?
No, I don't know who answered. You said what if you put on?
I would say, what if you put on the paper too? Like you run their name through certain checks and balances, external company, put data profiles to see if you find anything on them. Would that be sufficient too?
Right, and so normally you would say for low and medium, we only do a world check. For high risk, we do LexisNexis and Google searches. And then we get a proximal report. So we have like 3 or 4 other name checking systems that we use if you're high risk. If you're low risk, we check your name in one system. If you're high, we check it in like 3 other systems and perhaps ask you to go out and get a proximal report, which is like $1,500.
As the client.
As the client, right. So they are the controls.
About that cost.
Well, then you don't open an account with us. Because automatically in our account opening package, it tells you if you're low or medium, the cost to open this account is $500. If you're high risk, it's $2,000.
Oh, so
and that's just account opening. That's just account opening.
Oh, I didn't know some people is charged for that. I thought that was for free.
No, we do wealth management and trust services. So we charge you like $4,000 or $5,000 a year for the administrative fees, and then we get a percent. If you're in the market, we get a percentage of what you invest in the market. We get like 5% of your overall investment for the year.
Because y'all offer advice to them.
No, we had an advisory department. That was
okay.
So we weren't able to offer advisory.
Okay then, no problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
you very much.
My favorite word, the last question for Symphony and Nell, methodology.
Okay, I feel as though I had the spelling bee.
I making sure when you're reaching this exam, when you see these words and you'll cover all the grounds, because these, like I say, it was four chapters on risk.
So when you say methodology, you approach to how you are doing it.
What is methodology?
The method you take to do something.
That's what you could put. You could get points for that. The method you take. That's what you could write on the exam.
No. When you say method, I'm not trying to sound silly. I'm just saying, like, I guess maybe I need some help from Nell or some other persons, because at my mind, it can't go that far tonight.
That's the system or the policies and procedures that are put in place by the company to ensure that the risk framework and all the processes that are required for identifying risk, monitoring risk, reporting.
Fluff, Nell, you giving me fluff. No points.
Okay, well, I going back to go check it out then.
Yeah.
Okay, so y'all make sure y'all understand methodology and remember.
So the question is,
I went on the whose site did I go on when I showed you all the country rating, and I said this is where we get the information. This is the source data for the country rating, because it isn't
Basel governance.
There you go, the Basel Committee. So again, you have to be able to clearly set out how your risk framework works and give explanation as who determines that Afghanistan is high risk or Bahamas is high end or Russia or Mexico, right? So
when you say methodology, what would the question? How would the question come? What would be? Let's just say, give me a sample question about methodology, so I could think about which angle I need to go.
Just out of my head, pull one, right? In that same question that you have for homework on risk, where it asks you about the categories for the risk rating, A second part of that question says, and explain your methodology. So it asks you what are the categories, and of course you're going to say country rating, business service, the country in which you do business service, nationality, and then you have to say, and I would get this information from the Basel Committee.
Okay.
So you would list the category and say where the information is generated from.
Oh, okay. Well, I want to go read up on that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Miss Bullard. Something to think about.
Sorry,
Miss Bullard, I have
somebody.
a question.
Go ahead, Cassandra.
Okay, I was going through the videos, and in one of them you said that question that likes to be asked is what automatically makes you high versus what would, like, I don't know if I'm saying it right, what would be like considered high. And in the video you said being PAP, having correspondence banking and bearer shares make you automatically high. But if you're from like a jurisdiction that's like Afghanistan, you like that's a high risk jurisdiction, but it doesn't necessarily make you high. Is that true?
Correct.
Okay.
But you would find that, like I said, when we went into New York, we were told that they don't do business with high risk jurisdictions. So we would be outside of their appetite.
Okay.
You know, so, but if they did do business with us, they would, you know, get the high, will be a medium high. But if we, like Afghanistan, if you do business with Afghanistan, you would see that country rating, and then the rest of whatever you're asking for, the rest of the risk would have to be low for you not to be high. More than likely, a country like that, you would be automatically high. Because I've seen like people out of Turks and Caicos, because they are blacklisted and they are high risk and they don't have the AML framework in place at all. You say they live in Turks, they born in Turks and their business is in Turks, automatically high risk. But remember, there are 14 categories. So sometimes there are 10 categories. The Basel Committee, when they risk rate countries, there are 14 categories. And remember, I showed you all the category where they said it depends on your CFATF finding, your overall report. That was like 65% of your rating. You all remember when we looked at it? Yeah.
I saw that.
Yeah. And if you want
Okay.
to, go right back on that site. Go right back on the Basel Committee site, and they click on map and then click on methodology, and it'll tell you how countries are risk rated. And essentially, you would take the same thing, that's how the country is risk rated. This is how the business is going to be risk rated. Then scale it down. This is how the customer will be risk rated.
This is where you consider the corruption perception index as well?
Correct. So again, prior to 2018, I heard of CPI index, never dealt with it. But again, when we were told that, you know, I sent salary last week to Russia, this week, we don't deal with countries outside of a CPI index lower than 30. So of course, automatically, you can't even get into the institution if your CPI index is lower than 30. And that was coming out of a Swiss bank. And they were a correspondent bank. So again, the net effect was that we couldn't deal with those countries, and we had to try and de-risk those clients or get another correspondent bank. But you would find that the US are on those indexes right away, and Europe follows behind. We normally leverage off Europe because they have so many, they're not as stringent as the US with these sanctions and fines and what have you. So when you see a European bank saying we don't do business, it's best that you just close it out, because you will find it very hard to make their transfers. Okay.
Excuse me, Ms. Bullard.
Go ahead.
The CPI index can be found on the Basel Committee governance site also?
No, Transparency International. And again, you don't have to use Basel the Basel index. The Transparency International also gives you a country rating that's similar. And that's why you need to say, do you get your ratings from Transparency or do you get your ratings from Basel? It just depends on your organization. There's more than one way to get the information. That's why you have to document it so people would be able to test it. Just make sure it's efficient, make sure you're staying up to date. Okay, good. There are lots of
Ms. Bullard,
Hi.
just clarification, and you would talk about the Basel Committee pretty much like under the heading of like customer risk profiling. Yes.
If they ask you methodology, that's where you would talk about it. Only when you see methodology.
Okay.
Where are you getting your information from? This where I get it from.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But of course, you know, we went through that questionnaire.
Sorry.
We went through that questionnaire the other day in one of those classes, right? That was for what? The country's risk rating, right? And we know that the governor is working on, like I say, not only the sand dollar, but other initiatives. So
that's like when you build in the framework, right?
When you say when you build in the framework, what you mean?
Like the policies that for the company or for that's tailored for your company.
Okay, what's the question? I don't understand what the question is.
The methodology, like
yes.
what system you use, like
Correct.
that's for when you build in the framework.
Correct. Yeah, but like I said, we went through the risk rating survey for the country risk rating. So
and we go based on the country risk rating to help
I mean,
create.
I'm just saying you should be aware because there could be some questions regarding that because that's current.
Wait, Ms. Bullard, you said the Basel Committee gives us what?
The country risk rating.
Oh, okay.
So it tells you Afghanistan is high risk, Bahamas is medium high, Mexico is medium high, Canada is low, right? Like, where do you get this information from to put in your risk rating? Ms. Bullitt can't say your organization can tell you that Bahamas is high, medium, or low, right? So the international body, who is an international regulator, determines how countries are risk rated. And they have 14 categories and they tell you 65% is this, 10% from here, and they collate all those totals and then it comes out. Is the country cash intensive? How high is the leverage? How, you know, or something from all the sectors.
I'm on Sound Slow, but that's the one with the different colors on the map?
Yes.
Okay.
There's no dumb question. Ask if you're confused before you sit in the exam and just write foolishness. So good, so you know exactly where to go and do your research. Felicia, you say the question is hard. How is it hard?
This ain't no Miss Bullitt, it's just a lot. I get a little confused, but this isn't a mandatory, this won't be mandatory, right?
No, and that's just it. Like, so don't get overwhelmed by the questions that you're uncomfortable with. But like I am just saying, risk was 4 chapters, so you may get 3 risk questions. Don't be so, I mean, more than like out of 10 choices, 3 of them could be on risk. So if you don't feel comfortable with risk, you know, skip over it, but you need to understand it because if you work in a financial institution.
Ms. Bullard, there could be a possibility that a risk question may involve CDD.
Customer due diligence.
Mm-hmm.
That's a scenario question. So they'll tell you,
Okay.
Mr. So-and-so is from this place, a high-risk jurisdiction, or what are the red flags or something to that effect. I saw a question like that before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ms. Bullet, the methodology on page 32, that has nothing to do with this questioning. It
It in the
says risk
risk
assessment
section.
methodology, external assurances. And it gives like the information required to conduct a risk assessment, the control library, stuff like
Of
that.
course, of course.
Oh, so that's what you
That's
talk
where
about
the
when you
book
talk about
talks about
methodology?
methodology and being able to
Oh,
explain
okay.
it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Ms. Bullet,
Hi.
question. So basically, number 3 is actually dealing with all 4 of these chapters there.
Correct. And
Okay,
then since we talking about risk, so we could get past this, recommendation 1, tell us about recommendation 1. And all of this ties in together. And because there's going to be a question on it, more than likely, that'd be centered around our risk rating of the country. So tell us about, you and Gemma, tell us about recommendation 1, and then we'll be finished with risk entirely.
Okay. All right. So what we did with, give me 1 second, let me pull it up. Trying to pull it up. With recommendation 1, we just explain what it was. Lord, let's pull it. My question gone. Okay, so it states that all countries should identify, assess, and understand the money laundering and terrorist financing risk that they face. Oh God. That they face within a particular financial or non-financial business or profession. Countries should take action, including designating an authority or mechanism to coordinate actions, to assess risk and apply resources that are aimed at ensuring that risks are mitigated effectively. Based on that assessment, countries should apply a risk-based approach to ensure that measures to prevent or mitigate money laundering and terrorist financing are equivalent with the risks identified. They just went on to say that a risk-based approach is one in which controls are applied to each area, are proportionate to the degree of risk that exists there. This degree of risk is measured by the likelihood that a particular risk will materialize, combined with the expected damage it will cause if it does.
I can
Then we
take
went
the
on to,
other part.
go ahead, Gemma.
Okay. Over the years, the Bahamas has shown its commitment by establishing a robust AML and KYC regime. November 3rd, 2014, the Bahamas and the US signed the agreement, the International Tax Compliance Requirements of the Intergovernmental Agreement, to improve international tax compliance and to implement FATCA, foreign, which means the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act.
Too much
based
fluff.
on the
Too much fluff.
It's too much fluff, you think?
Yeah, too much.
I mean, we still have a page for like examples in reference to the legal framework, how they made changes to the Proceeds of Crime Act, and stuff like that. We have the changes that the Central Bank of the Bahamas issued a revised guidelines for the supervised financial institutions on preventing the prevention of money laundering, countering the finance of terrorism and proliferation financing.
No.
So still too much for a few things?
Yeah, you're going too far. Again, we are in the year, and I sent out the initiatives in terms of what we did specifically for the risk rating, and we went to the survey. So countries should assess their risk, put controls in place. What controls did the Bahamas put in place? The governor worked on the sand dollar, right? He decreased the leverage. Google's what else he did, and what we have done to I could see you saying, like,
Isn't that like
Sorry, Nell?
The register, like the register of the benefit.
Right, beneficial ownership.
registry.
Yeah, we were deficient in, I would just say we were deficient in 22, and you could use perhaps the register, perhaps the DM FBP is the non-financial businesses, but don't go in depth, you know, or about the initiatives to ensure that we come out as medium rather than high. Because what would make us high is because we, even though we don't offer bearer shares, we still hold bearer share accounts. We have a big trust offering, you know, stuff like that. So put, you know, identify your risk, put controls in place. Just the year of the risk rating, so you don't get high risk. What was done?
So, Ms. Bullitt, that means you want us to speak, because I thought like, okay, so that was just on recommendation 1.
Yeah.
But whatever we put in place, that was speaking to other recommendations that we weren't compliant on. So.
Okay, just say that we were deficient in 22, and so we are now, we have 10 outstanding or something to that effect.
Yeah, we complied in 30 and we have 10 partially compliant.
Correct.
We had that there. She was getting to that too.
Yeah, so Garrett specifically towards, Garrett specifically towards what we have done to ensure that this rating is not high.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you too. Okay, good. So that's risk. Cassie and Mia, let's talk about the IMF and the CFATF.
Okay, so what I would do in answering a question in this area, I would define what each of the organizations are, the FATF, IMF, and CFATF. And then I would discuss the relationship I would discuss the relationship between all 3 of the organizations. In relation to CFATF, I would go into the mutual evaluation report that outlined the deficiencies in the technical compliance area, which resulted in us, the CFATF enhanced follow process, which resulted in us being, having to do that. Then I would state the Bahamas' response to remedy those issues, what the outcome was. I would also discuss the findings in relation to the effectiveness deficiencies, and then discuss the impact of COVID-19 on the on-site review, which resulted in us being gray listed, and the threat of being on the EU blacklist as a result as well. And then I would discuss the measures taken by the Bahamas to remedy that. Then I would get into the IMF evaluation, their methodology, their DAR, and their ROSC. And then I would just conclude.
What is a DAR and ROSC, what that is?
The DAR is the Detailed Assessment Reports, and that provides a description and analysis of how the laws and regulations in place at the time of the assessment or immediately after the assessment, and the recommendations for strengthening the country's system and bringing it into compliance with the FATF standard. The ROSC is the report on observance of standards and codes, and that summarizes the findings of the detailed assessment report.
Okay, so don't use acronyms, because when we go to fact check what you wrote, we might pull up DAR and DR. DAR is something else. So make sure you are clear on what you are writing about.
Okay. And then I would conclude by showing how, based on the improvements that we did, that it is consistent with the comments that were made by the Attorney General in reference to the Bahamas' continued commitment in addressing the legislative, regulatory, and best practice challenges.
Just hear you going lower and lower.
Sorry?
I can't hear you going lower.
I was saying that I would conclude by showing that all of the steps that the Bahamas took to remedy the deficiencies, that they were consistent with the comments that the Attorney General made in reference to the Bahamas' continued commitment in addressing the legislative, regulatory, and best practice challenges in fighting money laundering, terrorism financing, and proliferation financing.
Okay, very good. Cassie sounds very thorough, but remember 10 points. So you may want to scale some of that down. Okay, but on point and very thorough. But remember one page, 1.5 page, and that's it. But to make sure you get your 10 points and then write around it.
Okay.
Okay, good. Is that from you and Mia, or Mia wants to add?
She can add if she wishes.
Okay. Mia? No? Okay. Okay, tax?
So, Ms. Bullet, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Remember in intro when they asked us about the IMF and the Bahamian relationship during Hurricane Dorian? That ain't got nothing to do with this question, eh?
Well, we covered it. See, we covered that in intro, so I doubt you'll see that question again.
Oh,
so,
thank God.
But again, I can't give you, the question. So, but we covered that, and so you shouldn't. The Hurricane Dorian, some other funding, probably perhaps with the pandemic, yes. I don't know if it'll be specific, but it'll be current events or something recent.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, good. Any other questions? Okay, good. Danielle and Cassandra on tax.
Good afternoon. I will just be covering the difference between tax evasion and tax avoidance, as well as the different types of tax. So let me just open it up. So tax evasion, explaining the definition, which is the process by which an individual completely avoids their tax obligation to the government. The forms, which is underreporting income, falsifying income records, willfully underpaying taxes, inflating expenses and deductions, and hiding money or interest in foreign countries. And then, of course, avoidance is the use of legal methods to minimize amount of tax owed. And the forms are debt collection, allocation, foreign tax credit, transfer pricing. And of course, mentioning tax havens, which is basically any jurisdiction that doesn't have tax or a minimal tax. I've also, like I said, I put the different types of tax. I've only listed a few here, which is sales and value-added tax, tariffs and excise tax, social security tax, and then the OECD, which is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development to address harmful tax practices. I also want to ask Ms. Bullard if with the OECD, if I can add the agreement between the Bahamas and Argentina for the exchange of information relating to tax matters.
Probably don't know, too much fluff.
Too much, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It'll be centered around avoidance versus evasion, and then you need an example, and then the W8, W9, W8 Benny, that people always get those mixed up, and they are more than likely the multiple choice questions.
Okay.
Cassandra has that info.
Yes, she does.
Okay, great. Go ahead, Cassandra.
Okay, so it's important to remember that tax evasion is illegal. So some cases involving that would be the biggest tax evasion case to date, which is the CEO of Reynolds and Reynolds. His name is Robert Brockman. In 2016, he was charged on 39 counts of tax fraud, and he even got someone to fly over and destroy the records. Close to the home, Shakira, who lived in Catalona, Spain, she evaded taxes by saying she was living in the Bahamas, but she wasn't. And when they followed the record for the 183 days, I believe, yeah, she said she was in the Bahamas and she was not. She was in Spain, and she had to pay the 14.5 million euros to make that go away. Another case of tax evasion would be Bahamians not paying customs. That falls under underreporting and falsifying documents. When you scuff the shoes and put it in your bag and say that you didn't just buy that. or you put your clothes in the bag with the dirty clothes to say you ain't just buy that. And for Americans, it would be falsifying, claiming dependence on their tax return, because the more dependents you have, the higher your allowance and the less your tax. So they go ahead and falsify that. On the other hand, tax avoidance is completely legal. And an example of that would be Bahamians bringing in unassembled furniture or energy saving appliances just so they don't have to pay the higher tax for assembled furniture or the regular appliances. The W-8 form, that is a tax form for the US that is submitted by a foreign individual to verify their country of residence. It also certifies that the person qualifies for a lower tax rate of withholding taxes. Withholding taxes are applied to a certain type of income, such as interest or dividends, salaries whereby the payer deducts the tax at source of income for the payee. So the difference between that and the W-8 band form is that the W-8 form is done by individuals. The W-8 band form is done by the owner of a business that is foreign. So it is for companies. And the W-9 is done by US citizens. So that's the main difference between those three.
Okay, great, great. Thank you for that, Cassandra and Danielle. Donna, are we talking about culture and the MLRO jobs?
Yes. So my question was question 6. And I think this question was similar to one that we did for one of the homework questions. So because I had already answered that, I had pulled most of my points from that particular question. I'm kind of wordy, so I don't know, you may tell me it's too much fluff, but anyway, I'm gonna go ahead. So culture and MLRO job description. My first point is that a strong AML culture in an organization helps companies avoid financial losses, like fines, penalties, suspension of license, and having their license revoked, and reputational damage that may be suffered as a result of failure to comply with the law, the regulators, guidelines, or standard practices to mitigate the risk of money laundering, terrorist financing, and proliferation of proliferation financing. That's my first point.
Okay.
Second, go on.
Go on.
Okay, secondly, I know in class we talked about some of the issues that may be encountered when trying to establish an AML culture, and these include the presence of cultural barriers where employees may feel like mitigating these risks is not their job, or senior management may not buy into the compliance culture, where minimum effort may be taken to a tick box approach rather than actually mitigating risk. And then where management may say an AML compliance program is too costly. So those were some of the issues that may be encountered when trying to establish an AML culture. And then my next point, the benefits of establishing an effective AML culture. It emphasizes a company's commitment to addressing any misconduct report. And in doing that, they establish trust with the employees, which leads to conditions in which management is able to hear about severe problems before the regulators pick up on it. I don't know if I word that properly. Which leads to conditions in which the management is able to pick up on issues before they are picked up by the regulators. Also, by establishing an effective compliance program, the board is better equipped to establish a healthy AML culture. So that's the benefits. So in one instance, I did some of the issues, and then this is the benefit. Values of ethics and integrity must come before any compliance framework, as the tone should be set to the top. Senior management must act in accordance with accepted principles of right and wrong. Senior management must understand its responsibilities in managing a company's money laundering risk and look at their legal obligation to mitigate these risks. Okay. So elements essential for building a strong AML culture. It must start from the tone from the top. Leadership must be engaged. There must be quality monitoring, balance interest whereby the compliance program should coincide with the business strategy. There should be sufficient resourcing, i.e. employment of sufficient compliance staff. There should be sufficient training and proper communication to all staff. So that's the points on the AML culture. And then these other points are for the MLRO role. Did I cover everything for the AML culture? Because I was going on to the MLRO.
Yeah, for 10 points here.
Okay. So for the role of the MLRO, in the Bahamas, the MLRO role is regulated. The regulatory body conducts vetting and approval with registration by the FIU. Their main responsibilities include, and I think this is also listed in the book, I'm just going to go through it quickly. Receive STRs, evaluate the STRs and access available information, determine whether internal STRs have merit and should be reported to law enforcement.
And Donna, 3 would be enough. So you could go on to the next part. 3, after you list 3 functions, then go on.
Great. So a formal process should be established for logging, processing, and tracing requests. The MLRO should also ensure that the line of communication is working effectively, which helps to ensure that requests for information, and this is from the law enforcement agencies and the regulators, ensure that requests for information from them are dealt with in a timely manner.
And that's enough right there. Okay, next point.
The MLRO is also expected to analyze the wording of any warrants or consent orders to ascertain whether consent has been granted for information, the precise terms of the law enforcement consent, and any continuing obligations for law enforcement agency.
Okay, yeah, fluff.
That's fluff?
Yeah. Because let's think about what would be a possible question. What are the barriers? What type of challenges that they would face, or something to that effect? Wearing too much hats where they want you to be AML compliant, legal risk, not being independent of the business, being intimidated by the CEO, stuff like, you know.
Okay, I think I have that briefly listed in when I was going over the responsibilities. I have some of that in there, but I didn't go.
Right. So after you list like 3 responsibilities, 3 functions and whatever, I think the next part of the question would ask, what would be a challenge? What would happen in the institution if A, B, and C, was to occur, something to that effect.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, we good?
Yes.
Okay, great. Any questions for MLRO or culture? No? Okay, great. STRs and cooperation, Kelia and Godet. Thank you, Donna.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Kelia, I see Kelia, you here? Kelia. Right, so. Is she here, Miss Bullard?
She's the Galaxy J6, so she's here.
I'm here. I'm trying to get on. I was saying you could go ahead. I'll pick up. Start.
Okay. All right, so with STRs, we pretty much looked at what are the responsibilities of the MLRO in the workplace. Looking at the MLRO's functions, you would determine the procedure for filing, making UTR reports.
No. Why are you looking at the MLRO function? We just do that in the MLRO jobs and culture. We don't need that for the STR. That's fluff.
Okay, so you would look at UTRs and STRs. what is a UTR? Who makes the UTR report? How is it done? What do you do? What is the process of dealing with the UTR if a report is made? And then the STR, who makes the report? How is the report made? And then I looked at UTRs, how a UTR can move from.
Stop using these acronyms.
Sorry, how does an unusual transaction report?
We should know what UTR and STR
Yeah, we should
is.
know, but we have a cross.
know.
We have a cross marker who may not know.
Okay, so how do you move?
Transaction.
So how do you move from an unusual transaction report to a suspicion transaction report? And what is the process of determining whether you should take that report and submit that to the FIU, which is the Financial Investigation Unit?
No, Financial Intelligence Unit.
Financial Intelligence Unit. And you can talk about the way that they would analyze that information and determine what is the next step from there. You talk about tipping off the client while a report is going on, while an investigation is being done. And then I think it'll be good that you talk about like some cases and examples of I mentioned the Michelle Reckley case. I mentioned the Edison Sumner case. I also mentioned a case of the Raymond Cohut case. And then I had an additional case by a lady at the Tabitha Wells lady who did the defrauding of the John Watling distillery.
Yeah, but you would only write one. You would write about one of those cases, and you would say at which point you would file that STR
report. Yeah. And then I think Celia could probably give some more information on, if she wants to, she could.
Okay, Celia, you want to add?
So some of the red flags for picking up on a STR would come out of money laundering, and when there's an inability to properly identify the client, or there are questions surrounding the client identity. When the client refuses to, these are some of the flags that would probably lead you to report a UTR. The client refuses to or tries to avoid providing information required, or provides information that is misleading, vague, or difficult to verify. And then the client refused to provide information regarding beneficial owners, or provides information that is false, misleading, conflicting, or substantially incorrect. When there are inconsistencies in the identification documents, like if the client provides what do we call it? The proof of address or verification of address, and that's one address, and then the other documents have another address, and all of these inconsistencies, they're red flags. Although we know that high wealth clients do have many homes, it should be consistent for this file. Client produces false identity that appears to be counterfeited or something like that. And then, I wanted to talk about the fines, because when I submitted my paper to you, Ms. Fuller, you told me that I didn't mention anything about the fines.
Okay.
Okay, so let me see, where did I write that information? Yeah, a breach made by a company, the commissioner can impose a fine of a maximum penalty up to 200,000. Is that right? I think I picked that up somewhere.
But when you say fines, I thought you meant tipping off and failing to disclose.
Yeah, sorry, those fines for not reporting, for not reporting
Yeah.
or tipping off. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So I wouldn't go in specifics a company, or so I would just those two general ones, failing to disclose.
200,000 and 50,000 and 50,000 for an individual, like if you're being charged as an individual,
Mhm.
or if the company is being fined, then according to the act, it's 200,000.
Okay, but again, we only need the fine for failing to disclose and tipping off. I wouldn't go into other fines, you know?
Okay.
Yeah.
Ms. Bullock, could we also talk about just briefly on your own like office procedure, if something like that was to happen at your office, what can possibly be done, or how you would go about dealing with an STR?
If the question asks you that.
The question asks you,
If
okay.
that's the importance.
Right.
A lot of persons, like I say, they go and copy and paste the homework, or they copy and paste what is said in the review, and they don't read the question, and they don't get the points. You get like 2 points for rehashing what was said here. So you need to ensure that you understand the question, what the question is asking, and answer all parts of it.
Okay. So the last part of the question was cooperation with authorities, and I wasn't quite sure what you're talking about there. Like what was the question?
That was last week's class. That was
I think that
last
was
week's
the
class.
MLRO cooperating.
So you're talking
oh,
about
thought-
how the transaction report should be provided to the FIU?
What were the homework questions in regards to cooperation?
Right.
I had one of the things you said, Ms. Bullard, was that the MLRO should have a good established relationship with the financial intelligence unit, financial intelligence unit, and looking at the different acts and stuff that could possibly be involved in the court presenting an order for a specific person to do a specific thing, and being very cautious of what is in the order and how the order is to be carried out, making sure that you're not breaching confidentiality and those things. Is that what you mean?
Yes. And then you should look at the classwork, because each of these topics had a classwork question, and that could be a possible question that would be asked.
Okay, so that was the question I submitted to you on transaction reporting, right?
You didn't see some questions below. I think that was chapter 8. So chapter 9 talked about cooperation. You don't see the questions on the class worksheet about cooperation. Does anybody have the classwork?
Yes, your receptionist called your regulator, the director of the FIU, and the commissioner of police is in the lobby. And she gave us a story about the guy at her work who was one of her tellers, who they had to walk out the door, and they had to be discreet about it as not to have reputational risk, stuff like that.
Okay, all right.
Right. Okay, good. Good. So any questions on STR or cooperation?
What we need to put is recommendation 20 in the reading, or that's just.
You could, you would get some points for that.
Yeah, I had that. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. And then I talked about the two acts that would relate to Transaction Report Act, Financial Transaction Report 2018, and the Proceeds of Crime Act 2018 would be the two relevant acts.
Okay. Okay, good, yeah. Okay.
And I talked about some of the ways of trying to avoid having to report UTRs or STRs was maintaining staff training at least once per year, and staff being aware of internal procedures for reporting STRs, and then the whistleblower policy.
Okay. Okay, that's good. That would be relevant. Okay, is Jason here yet?
Hi.
Hey,
sorry,
Jason.
Sorry, guys. Before we move forward, Ms. Willett, I just wanted to ask a question back on tax. When it relates to the recommendation, will we use recommendation 18, which is internal controls and foreign branches, or we just wouldn't put a recommendation for it?
It's not necessary, but it's really covered under the penal code.
Okay.
In our laws, yeah. Yeah. Okay, Jason?
Good evening, all. So I had question 9, which was section 319 of the U.S. Patriot Act. So I attacked this question by firstly establishing what the origin where the 319 Act came from. The terror attacks of 2001 forced the U.S. to establish the International Money Laundering Abatement and Anti-Terrorism Financing Act, known as the Patriot Act. And this is provided the United States with tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorism activities. And then I talked about the purpose of 319. And the purpose of 319 allows U.S. government agencies like the Treasury Department to seize illicit funds of individuals and entities located in foreign banks by authorizing either Attorney General or the Secretary of the Treasury to issue summons or subpoenas to those foreign banks. 319 also mandates an establishment of an agent in those foreign banks for proper liaison. I also talked about how the Section 319 is applicable to the Bahamas. And it's applicable because the Bahamas, foreign institutions, banks in the Bahamas hold accounts in the United States. And by the Patriot Act, they are deemed foreign banks under those provisions. And they're subject to adhering to US laws or summoning information regarding those account holders.
But not only because we hold accounts. We are foreign to the US, so we are a foreign bank.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, it's also applicable because of the clearing of US dollars. We convert to US dollars to foreign currency or vice versa for clients through numerous transactions like loan payments, money transfers to client suppliers. And also, okay. Another way it's applicable to the Bahamas because of the long arm of the US law. Because the Bahamas is the United States is the sorry, I'm getting my words mixed up here. Sorry, the US is the main trading partner of the Bahamas. And it's because of this. Okay. The establishment of an AML Act, because of the long arm of US laws, there was an establishment of the AML Act of 2020.
It's the extraterritorial arm of the US dollar. End of the story.
Okay.
We are a foreign bank.
The
act is specifically for foreign. Yeah, but don't put all of that extra stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, you want to make sure you have all the points. So the extraterritorial arm, they have all the money going to the Fed. The US Patriot Act was specific for foreign banks, and every bank in the Bahamas would be considered foreign to the US.
Okay. Okay. Could I go into what the 319B also requires record keeping? Should I go into that?
Yes, that would be relevant.
Okay, so Section 319B requires all foreign banks to keep records. And those 3 points are foreign institutions must adhere to those following record-keeping requirements by maintain records in the United States identifying the owners of such foreign banks and individuals. 2, maintain records in the United States identifying the name, and
Okay, now that's
addresses.
fluff. Just
Fluff?
me, yeah.
Okay, so
You don't have
names and addresses of persons, individuals, individuals and businesses.
records is sufficient.
Okay. All right. And also there are penalties.
And that's it. There are penalties.
And penalties. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's it.
Okay, great. Any questions regarding 319?
You don't have to say what the penalties are.
No, you won't get any points for that.
Okay.
I mean, you could say, but you won't get any points.
There'll be a penalty if you don't do record keeping. That's what you mean.
Well, when they subpoena you and they ask for information, if you don't have records, then that's a fine.
Okay, just confirming. Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. And sorry?
No, I was saying that's it. Sorry.
Yeah, okay. Any other questions? No? Can we have a drum roll, please, for our last question? Before this all ends? Nobody else as excited as me? No? Okay, but my last tip for the exam is, there are questions 1 through 10, and just like an intro, whichever one is most easiest to you, please do that first, because it won't hold you up and you won't get stuck. So if tax is your easiest question, please complete that. If that's number 10, do number 10 first. Just make sure that your name is on every page and each question is labeled properly. Don't staple over the paper, over the question number, and I got to tear the paper apart. So please write the number. This is question 10 in the middle of the page with your name, so I can, identify which question it is, because I like to have the last say on the paper. So the cross marker normally marks the papers first, and they would say, well, I don't even know which question this is. Okay, they didn't start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if the multiple choice is the easiest, answer multiple choices. Question 10, do question 9, then 1, then 8, 7. It does not have to be in order. It just has to be labeled properly. Okay?
Question, Ms. Ballard. When you're writing the essay, if you use like FIU and AML, and you don't want to see those.
No, we know FIU and AML, but somebody it's STR and UTR. I mean, they could be used for
Okay, Ms. Bullen.
So STR is fine.
What if we do it like how you would normally do when you're writing something, and when you first mention FIU, you put Financial Intelligence Unit, FIU in brackets, and then the rest of it you can just do FIU to save time.
Correct, that's fine. But remember, when you write, you are to write as if the reader does not know anything about what you wrote about, and so you should fully explain yourself. So yeah, you could do it like that, or put a legend to the side, or whatever is easiest. But FI, like the very common ones is fine. AML, CFT, PF, that's fine. But I think when Cassie was speaking, she said some other stuff we weren't familiar with. We didn't know what it meant. Okay.
UTR.
And then UTR is not as synonymous, because I had somebody circle that before and say, what are they referring to? Okay, so just do like what Godette said and you should be fine.
Ms. Bullet.
Yes.
Do you recommend actually writing the question, like when you're about
No,
that?
that's a waste of time. Just number it and put your name on every page.
Okay.
Yeah. Customer due diligence. Stop it. Y'all just like to be overwhelmed and stressed out. And then I had a class of 50 in an intro, and I got like 8 A's, and it was like, Ms. Bullet, you give them the test. They wanted to make y'all do it over. So stop it. It is comprehensive. It is a lot of work, but it's very achievable. And like I said, if you've been in intro, you've done this before, and so you know how it works. And like I said, the key is being organized. You prepare yourself, you come organized, you read the question 2 or 3 times, and then underline, this is question 3, but this has 3 parts. I need to answer all 3 parts. Okay? And questions, like if you're doing tax and sanctions, you should walk into that exam, read that question and write about taxes. Read the question, write about sanctions, and then say, okay, let me see SDRs or risk. and go from there. Okay, but it's achievable. So stop overwhelming yourself. Make sure take your time off. Make sure don't, I mean, at minimum, you should get off 4 o'clock that day. Don't come here rushed and hungry and had to fight traffic and this emergency happened. Please try at least 12 o'clock, get off that day and be relaxed, have a nice meal. And I promise you, you will do well. And then plan a celebration right afterwards and reward yourself for making it through the 10 weeks. Okay? So Erica,
Sound good.
Yes, ma'am.
send us home.
Yes. Okay, good night, everybody, again. So enhanced due diligence is designed to handle high-risk customers and large transactions. This higher level of due diligence is required to mitigate the increased risk. A high-risk situation generally occurs where there is an increased opportunity from money laundering or terrorist financing through the service and product you or the customer is providing. And I don't know, you might tell me this is a fluff also. So what the enhanced due diligence actually entails will be dependent on the nature and severity of the risk. Also, that is to verify the customer's identity, source of income.
Yeah,
and
fluff.
Yeah, okay. Calculating a KYC risk, that's a fluff too?
Yeah.
Okay.
We want the difference between simplified and enhanced. You remember we do this in
Yeah, no, but
April.
I know we only talked about enhanced.
Yeah, okay, so you know simplified, so tell me what you would do in an enhanced situation.
Okay, so with an enhanced situation, the account is normally approved by the board and the committee. A review is done once a year. What else I could say? A review is done once a year. Let's see what else.
We label it as high risk. We place it with a senior officer. All of that is controls.
Yes. Okay. And then for the simplified due diligence, you do the review of an account. I think it's every 3 years, if I can remember. Yeah.
Right, so if it's
and that
low.
is considered low. That's what I going to say.
Correct.
Yeah, low or medium.
Correct.
Right. And then also, I mean, do I need to add anything else to that?
So the proximal report.
And then I had that too. I had that also. But you was telling me it was a fluff.
No, but the proximal is an extra report that is paid to verify who the person is.
Right.
Yeah, and to corroborate the information that the person would have provided.
Right. And then I also had paying special attentions to PEPs and their close family members.
Correct.
And
because
then, sorry.
This question would be like a scenario question, right? And you would have to say, basically, these are the red flags and these are the controls that I would put in place to mitigate the risk.
Okay. And then I also had that enhanced due diligence should be documented in detail, and regulators should have immediate access to reports. I don't know.
Yeah. Depending on what the question asks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if I missed anything else which should be valid.
Okay, so with customer due diligence, of course, we know there are 5 statutory requirements. One is identification. So it probably will ask, like, what are the industry issues, you know, and I know I talked about deficiencies across the identification sheet or the account opening sheet, where like Kelia said earlier, they have different addresses, so they want to put their summer home, and so they have, you know, you have to ensure that they put the correct address, and then they use names like Bob instead of Robert, and you know, and
Code
then,
names.
yeah, code names or aliases, and then they sign differently, or they miss out pertinent information, or there are spaces where you have the initial and they don't initial, and so then the salesperson will go and sign that in for them on their behalf, because they don't want to go through the process of having to send the forms back, especially if it's coming from overseas.
So
And
that's
so we know
altering the document.
there you go. So when that person shows up in court with their copy, they'll say, this is my copy.
And this is what I didn't do.
There you go. And then another common thing is distorted pictures, distorted writing, language. You know, the law says it must be in plain English. This the Bahamas. Even if you're a French company or a European company, it's just the Bahamas. But then we have, you know, information on file that's in Mandarin or in Spanish or in French.
Yeah.
Okay, not being properly certified. So there are various issues when it comes to due diligence, and then reviews are not being done on time. We're too afraid to ask the customer, you know, did you get married? Did any PEPs related to any PEPs? Sometimes, you know, we feel that we're being intrusive, and we sales people don't want to lose business, and they say, well, I can't ask the customer that. And then in other instances where we don't have the proper metrics in place, we have staff members saying, how am I supposed to know all these clients? But you are required. So it'll probably ask about deficiencies across the industry or within an organization, or what the possibility is in regards to customer due diligence.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so, and then the customer due diligence questioning. That would have really just speak about what you had just mentioned, or I could say.
Yeah, like I said, I've seen a question that asks about what are the possible deficiencies.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Then I saw one that asks about if you offer these products and services, what due diligence should be carried out.
Okay.
That's where you talk about enhanced due diligence.
Okay.
You know, it just depends. And then they give a scenario. Miss Ferguson lives in Afghanistan with her boyfriend, and you know, a scenario, and you pick out the red flags, and then you say, these are the controls I can put in place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so saying that you were saying it's a fluff, the class can perhaps look at page 40 through 43 for the other details on customer due diligence.
Okay, great. Okay, any questions for Erica, or we clear as mud?
Ms. Bullard, I have a question with this due diligence question. I think one of the homework question was what FATF recommendation speaks to customer due diligence. I know 10 is one of them, but
from 10 to 25.
Okay, all right, because I had several.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
and
I just wanted to know, right, I wanted to know if I was overthinking or something, but
no.
I have several of them.
No, if you look at it, it says customer due diligence, and it goes from straight to 10 to 25.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's all right, Ms. That you mean 10 to 25 in the book?
Yeah, in the 40 recommendations.
Oh, okay, okay.
This one, yeah. So I was saying it was quite a number of them.
Okay.
From 10 to 25, all inclusive, yeah. Because that would cover identification, monitoring, record keeping, training, all of those fall under due diligence. straight up the STRs.
Diligence, or that's too much.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
The Basel paper on customer due diligence or central bank guidelines. Need to mention those or no?
No, not. Okay, so we've done it. And this is a very intellectual class, so I have no worries at all. And like I say, when I sit down after, I was so afraid for Cassandra and for Donna and a few of you in intro, and y'all blew it out the water. So I know that y'all will do well. And I have
I have a question.
Go ahead, Cassandra.
What was you said one of the 5 statutory requirements is identification?
Yes,
I've been
ma'am.
trying to flip through the book to find the rest. You know what section that in?
Go get your intro book and you'll find them all.
Oh, that would have been easier. All right.
Yeah, all there, right there.
Right.
The MLRO, record keeping, monitoring, training, and identification. That's the 5.
Oh, I see it. Thank
Sorry,
you.
that was the 5 recommendations for what? Sorry.
That's the 5 statutory requirements.
And that's for, sorry, I had stepped away for a minute.
The KYC 5, customer due diligence 5 statutory requirements. I see it.
Ah, okay, okay. Yeah, sorry. Thank you.
Well, I can't believe I didn't remember that.
That's why you take your time, do your research, write out your 10 points and just come prepared and you'll be fine.
Could you repeat those for me, please? For those who weren't in one? Introductory, sorry.
Identification, monitoring, record keeping, training, and the MLRO. So 5 requirements are the 5 things that are required by law. So they are the must. You must keep records, you must train your staff, you must have an MLRO on staff, you must identify your customer, and you must monitor their account.
Hello.
Hi.
Oh, I thought my internet dropped.
Quiet, okay. So that's it, guys. It was a pleasure. And I hope to see some of you in ICA if you continue on this journey.
Miss Bullard.
Who's teaching that too?
Unfortunately, Cassandra.
You can see me.
But you thought you was rid of me. Like, oh God, no more Miss Bullet. That's all right, Cassandra. I could be right there.
But you can see my face and I got plenty of questions.
I know, that's fine. That's great. That's very good.
Yeah. I think the overall experience of the class, for me, sometimes, yeah, I complain because it's a lot of information, like a lot of information. But I think you give us a very good guideline to follow. And I appreciate you for that. And once you give us that guideline, we pretty much know what to do. It's just that trying to dissect all the information up and digest it. Sometimes it seems a bit overwhelming.
Yeah, it is. And remember when we started off in intro, I said, if you don't like to read, and if, it's a very comprehensive and loads of information, that's why I said, build your network. So you'll have something to leverage off. So you don't always have to have all answers, or you don't always have to go and do all the research. There'll be somebody to help you and you'd be able to help somebody, so thank you. And I appreciate you all. And it has indeed been a pleasure.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Bullard.
you, Ms.
Thank
Bullard.
you. Y'all make me proud now. Make me proud.
Thank you, Ms. Bullard.
I want to
Thank
have
you, Ms.
that
Bullard.
big smile on my face when I mark those papers.
So when do we get the results, please?
Okay, so 2 weeks after you would have taken the exam, you can call the office. Ms. Bullet is not allowed to give out grades. Y'all please don't call me and say, Ms. Bullet, please sneak me the grade. I'm not allowed. You call the office 2 weeks after you sit the exam and Ms. Dean will give you your grade.
Okay, Ms. Bullard, I booked my time a couple weeks ago for the exam, but I never heard anything back from Ms. Dean.
Okay,
I guess
so
they have to call office and find out.
yes, please.
Okay. She didn't come back to me and say, okay, confirm or not.
Okay, so I'll let her know, but please contact her if you haven't made
I
an
will call
arrangement with her already.
Yeah, I'll call her tomorrow.
Okay. Okay, great. So you'll have a fabulous week. You'll study this week. And like I said, prepare your celebration for the week after and make me proud. And I trust that you all will.
We will.
Okay,
Yeah,
excellent,
We will.
excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so you'll
Thank
have a
you.
fabulous
Thank you.
evening.
Thank you too.
Okay, good night.
Good night.
Night.
Good
Good night,
night.
Ms. Bullard.
Night.
Good night.
Good night.